Can you hear me all right now? I have that on my list of things to do is to check hearing. I just attended two different conferences and one of them had an unbelievable amount of just random technical issues. So I kind of got it down to a system here. So I really want to welcome everybody to our student presentations and our map contest viewing and awards. And I'm really looking forward today. We're going to have three fabulous presentations. And then we're going to look at some maps, and I haven't seen any of the maps yet, so I'm excited to see what people have submitted for the contest. And that's really pretty much all I have. I want to invite everybody on my list. If anybody wants to join Magic, I think maybe most of the people on the phone are already members. We have a member price, we have a student price. Right now, you don't really get any benefits aside from just the excitement of being a member of Magic, because we're really, we really just want community involvement. So, we don't want people to feel pressure to join. We just want people to join if they want to, be a member of the organization, really help move it forward. Our intention is over the future, we will start having, benefits that are just for members. But again, I've been in this club for, I guess, coming up on, is it 20 years maybe? And, really it's from the very beginning, it's just been an outreach and to really, promote GIS and to get folks interested. And I probably use GIS less than anyone on the call today. I do have a geography degree, but I do know that like anytime I've had a question, I've had tons of great answers from everybody right away. And just by having the connections, I've been able to do stuff that I never would have been able to do. So, I think it's a great organization if you're just getting started in your career, or if you're involved in it, or if you do different kinds of GIS. It's, it's great. Now, we've all become really good friends, I think, over the years too. So, yeah. Who's this?
I was just going to throw in real quick on the Magic membership. There is one benefit that gives you a free, free. Your paid Magic membership gets you into our annual conference, which so we have a 2-day conference in November, where this actually usually the scholarship competition takes place during our conference, and the conference is amazing. We have speakers from all over that present on a variety of topics. And I guess I'd just also throw in that, Magic is a great way to network and find out about good opportunities for employment, or just to share ideas about projects in GIS. Honestly, I have to credit the Magic to me being employed where I am now. That's how I met the person who ended up hiring me. So there's a lot to it. But yeah, I just want to make sure y'all know if Magic membership gets you into the cost of Magic membership gets you into the conference, but all of our events are available even without a paid membership at this point.
Yeah, and actually, it's great you brought that up, because I was a membership of a different group similar to Magic, but for a different field, and there was like an economic downturn, and people were looking for jobs, and I actually had a job that was fine that I liked, and it wasn't going anywhere, but I had 3 or 4 people come up to me and say, "Hey, we're looking to hire someone. Are you interested in coming to us?" And it was all just people I knew from that professional organization. And it's really cool. I didn't know about Rob's getting his job that way, but it's really cool. It's worked out. So anyway, with no further ado, let me turn the session over to Cheryl Russell. She's going to introduce the contest and introduce our speakers. So Cheryl, take it away. And I'll stop sharing video just so it's not annoying.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, so every year Magic awards some monies for scholarships for students who have been either working on a project or doing some research that want to share what they've been doing with the GIS community. And we want to thank our generous sponsors and members who make that possible for us to do that. We had several of our many entries. They were all great. So I want to thank everyone for all their submissions for this contest, and congratulate our finalists today. And thank you for participating in Magic. And so today we are going to be awarding 3 prizes: first place, second place, and third. First place will be a check in the amount of $1,500. Second place will be $1,000, and third place will be $500. So we wish everybody best of luck today. And to give a little bit of information about the scholarship, there are some eligibility and requirements that have to be met. Some of those are that the applicant must be an undergraduate student currently enrolled in good standing in a college or university in the area served by Magic, full-time or minimum of 12 credit hours in consecutive semesters. And then there's some other requirements to go along with that. But the main thing is that their project has to be involved in GIS. So which all of these are. There's other requirements, but everybody can go online and check out more about that on our website. So without hesitating any further, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our first contestant is Joe Hernandez, and he is going to be speaking on wetland suitability and high flood risk zones in Harris County, Texas. So Joe, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Hernandez, and I'm a senior at Rhodes College. And today I'll be presenting on wetland suitability in high flood risk zones in Harris County, Texas. And for this project, I wanted to explore the intersectionality of urban environments, looking at environmental justice and climate change, specifically looking at Harris County, which is located in Houston, Texas. Now, there are many environmental justice issues that is tied in with climate change, and that is mostly due to the social historical processes that have shaped and driven the inequality patterns that we see today in the U.S., such as in wealth, pollution, and wealth that have basically shifted or impacted the urban structure of our cities. Now, due to these urban inequalities, the health and security of minoritized communities are often compromised through the overexposure of high exposure pollution and high risk climate change risk impact. And one of the major issues that these marginalized communities will face in the coming years will be climate change, especially within coastal cities. And with the expansion of impervious surfaces, such as streets and roads through urban expansion, and the increased likelihood of rain, sea level rise, and storm surges that will come with climate change. One of the major issues that these marginalized communities will face in the coming years is this severe flooding problem. And all of which will impact low socioeconomic communities disproportionately, because these communities often are living within these high flood risk zones and don't have the adaptability measures to kind of cope with those challenges that come from flood events. And much of the lack of protection from flooding and storms overall is due to the urban environment's overwhelming loss of natural landscapes, such as wetlands, which provide natural water storage and flood attenuation. So with a well-planned network, urban wetlands can be optimized for the benefits derived from green stormwater infrastructure that serves as a measure of flood mitigation and water filtration. So by focusing on wetland restoration and conservation, wetlands can contribute to building resilience against the increasing effects of climate change that can ultimately decrease the risk impact on vulnerable communities. And one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on Houston, Texas, specifically Harris County, is because Houston has this reoccurring flooding problem that has progressively increased over the years. And a notable example of this is the flood event that took place in 2017 induced by Hurricane Harvey. And a recent study done on Hurricane Harvey revealed that the extent of Harvey's induced flooding is that the flood impacted higher proportions of non-Hispanic Black communities and socioeconomic communities. And with Hurricane Harvey being one of the most recent and strongest storms that has hit Houston in the recent years, there's the importance of investigating suitable areas for wetland restoration and maintenance in Houston to basically reduce the disproportionate risk of flooding felt among the vulnerable communities living in high flood risk zones. So for this research, I look at identifying suitable wetland areas in Harris County, specifically in high flood risk zones, to know where wetland restoration and conservation efforts can be implemented. So the objectives of this presentation and research is to create a wetland suitability index for Harris County, and then use that index to locate suitable areas for wetlands in high flood risk zones.
Hey, Joe, you muted yourself.
Oh,
We heard your second objective, so start off from there.
okay. So yeah, so we'll use the index to locate suitable areas for wetlands and high flood risk zones, and then basically relate the index to racial landscapes within these high flood risk zones, to kind of just highlight what populations will benefit from these theoretical wetland restoration plans. Yeah, so to achieve this, I followed the approach of a recent study that created a wetland suitability index for locating restoration sites in a mixed wood plain. And in my study, I followed the same steps to create a wetland suitability index, but for Harris County, and to basically just identify areas where wetlands can be supported and restored. And according to the study, there are 6 criteria that contribute to the suitability index of wetlands, which are as follow: agriculture, buildup, slope, soil drainage, stream proximity, and groundwater. Using ArcGIS and the table provided on the left, I reclassified and manipulated data from open data sources to scale all data on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 meets the high suitability criteria for wetland restoration, or for wetland suitability. So going through each data, for agriculture, I reclassified land cover data, ranking cropland and pasture land cover as a 10, to kind of just prioritize agricultural land due to the common displacement of wetlands for agriculture use. For a build-up area, I again used the land cover data set to reclassify land cover data to rank non-developed areas as a 10, representing where wetland restoration is plausible. And then for soil drainage, due to wetlands efficiency to retain water, I rasterized the soil survey data and reclassified it to rank very poor drainage as 10. And then for groundwater level, I interpolated the groundwater data points using a Kriging map, and then reclassified that map into 3 quantile classes, ranking shallow groundwater with a score of 10, and then ranking groundwater with a 10 due to groundwater. Since shallow groundwater is prioritized for wetland suitability, and then for slope data to calculate slope degrees and rank lower degrees of slope as a 10. And then finally, for stream proximity, I used a stream polygon to create 2 buffers, a 250-meter buffer and a 500-meter buffer, and then rasterize those buffers, ranking the 250-meter buffer as a 10. And then once I had all these 6 criteria, I then calculated weighted sum using the following weights shown on the right to create my wetland suitability index for Harris County. So with this in place, this is what I got. And with this map, we can see that greener areas represent higher suitability for wetlands in Harris County, and the red areas represent low suitability. Now from this visual, we can see that there's higher suitability areas within its eastern and western region, and low suitability within the central and kind of southern region, which kind of reflects the where the urban environment is at in this county. Now we look at the suitability of wetlands within these high flood risk zones in this county. We can see the same trend. So the west and east, there's high suitability, and north and south, low suitability. But overall, we kind of see kind of a scatter of what suitability indexes within these high flood risk zones. Now, by using the soulscape racial diversity data sets, we can highlight what communities are at higher risk of flood impact by looking at the racial populations that live within these high flood risk zones. So looking at this map, we can see that there are variations of racial populations vulnerable to flooding. But we can mostly see Hispanic populations, which are represented in the color purple, and non-Hispanic white populations represented in yellow orange, and with some inclusion of non-Hispanic Black populations in the southern region represented in green. Now, if we would compare the wetland suitability index and the racial landscapes within these flood high-risk zones, we can see some disparities in the locations where there is wetland suitability. For example, if we look at the where there's higher suitability areas in comparison to the racial populations, we can see that generally there's higher wetland suitability in the white vulnerable communities. You can see that in the 3 circles on the map. And not only is there higher suitability in these areas, there's also a higher extent of suitable areas. So there's higher potential to create these connectivities within these wetland restoration plans. But if we look at the other racial populations within these high flood risk zones, we can see that generally there's low suitability within these racial populations, most notably in these areas. So in these areas, and basically in conclusion, we can see how wetland suitability index can be a useful tool for understanding the spatial distribution of wetlands suitability within an area, and how this can help in prioritizing areas for restoration and conservation efforts. But from this research, we can see that the environmental factor should not be the only factor that should be considered in the context of environmental injustice. I feel like there needs to be kind of a new holistic approach in identifying wetland restorations in urban environments in a way that is more equitable, again, in the context of environmental injustice. So for future research, I think there needs to be more studies done that integrates different factors, so such as social and economic factors that identifies restoration sites, and that encompasses the overall environment of where wetland restorations can help benefit the most in urban environments. And just another aspect that I wish I could look at in this research was the inclusion of existing wetlands in the suitability index, and that's mostly just to identify where we can help promote wetland suitability connectivity for restoration efforts. And yeah, I'd like to thanks the Memphis Area Geographic Information Council for this opportunity, Rhodes College for providing the resources and software to make this research possible, and Dr. Boyle, who provided us with the skills and tools needed to make this research possible. Citations, and is there any questions?
Hey, Joe, this is Sean. Great presentation. I've got a couple of questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the cost, have you done any research, or has it come across your work on this about, so you've classified areas that would be good for wetlands. Do you think it would cost, well, I think it'd be obvious, it would cost more to implement wetlands in an areas that's harder to do it than the areas on the outside? Or have you seen anything like this? So if you've identified areas that would be good for wetlands, you think there's any kind of cost problems or issues depending on where you do it within that county?
I know in general there's it's very difficult to restore wetland to its initial integrity, just because it's not as efficient as a historical wetland. So I know there's obviously the like financial cost of creating that, but yeah, did you mean the financial cost or just like the social cost?
Well, I was thinking, like you said, you pointed out areas on the outside of the county that were more easy to have wetlands, but I didn't know if it would cost more to do it there or cost less than doing it in the inside. But it sounds like to me it'd be more expensive doing it more on the core side of the county than on the outside.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, that should probably be the next step for this research, just seeing the financial cost of what it will look like, implementing these restoration sites.
Okay, my next question was about policy and zoning. So did you ever look at something about, zoning? So a lot of counties, they have zoning that dictates the kind of development that happens in the county. So you got residential, commercial, industrial, that kind of stuff. Did you ever look into that? Any kind of correlation between your modeling and maybe looking at the way the county is zoned?
Not specifically for my research, but I know that there's often residential zones within high floodplains, which is a major issue in Houston, which is why we see a lot of these damages on property. But yeah.
Because I can tell you here in Tipton County, we've got zoning that kind of prohibits people from, developing and doing things within certain flood zones and flood areas. We're not telling people, hey, you can't build or do something that you want, but we do have regulations that, kind of helps them not to have flood loss and problems and issues. And I just think that maybe the county would have some zoning that would help with some of this wetland stuff. Just curious, but thanks for your answers. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Cool. Does anybody else have a question? We have a couple minutes. If anybody else has a question. I know I have one comment about Harris County. I'm not sure if it's changed or not, but Harris County has kind of been famous or infamous for minimal land planning, I guess you'd call it, or restrictions of where people build. So it's,
Well, there you
I
go.
don't know, that might have
Yep.
changed, but I know historically it hasn't had zoning to
Mhm.
much of an extent. Well, great. Well, thanks so much, Joe. And let me turn it back over to Shara to continue us.
All right, thank you.
Shara, you're on mute. Okay, there you go.
Yes, okay, I got it. All right, thank you, Joe. All right, so our next speaker is June Huang, and he is going to be speaking on U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan, uncovering the lesser-known war on terror.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Today I'll be presenting on U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan, and I'm an international studies major, so that kind of shapes a lot of my perception of GIS research, so I'm excited to share it with you today. So to give a little bit of an introduction, these drone strikes are part of the larger global war on terror that was a response to the 9/11 attacks. So it started with the Bush administration's invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq in 2001 and 2003. There are still military operations ongoing in the region today, and that includes these drone strikes. These drone strikes target Pakistan's mountainous border area that it shares with Afghanistan. This is a very porous border area that has a lot of terrorist and insurgent activity. It's a less governed area. And so drone strikes are used by the US military and the CIA to basically specifically target terrorist and insurgent leaders that are hiding out in these areas. And they're used instead of deploying soldiers to the area because of their higher precision and lower collateral damage. At least that's the official US government rhetoric. And for the purposes of my project, I'll be focusing on Obama's use of drones since he was the most prolific user of these drone strikes, although every president since Bush has used them. So my objectives with this project include mapping drone strikes in relation to terrorist activity, and also finding out about the geographic and demographic characteristics of where these drone strikes are hitting, like elevation, land cover, and population density. And one significance of this project is that it recognizes and takes advantage of GIS technology, because war is inherently geospatial. A lot of times the study of war and the study of terrorism is not. So a lot of times terrorism scholars can use case studies or other quantitative methods like regressions, but they forget or ignore or underplay the geospatial aspect of it. So My methods include downloading the drone strike data from New America, which is a think tank that tracks these drone strikes. And also I use the armed conflict location and event data for a wider map of terrorist activity within the region. And you'll see the kernel density map that I created from the drone strikes and the different symbologies that I used, whether there were militant leaders killed, the percentage of civilian casualties, number of casualties. And my methods also included downloading population density data from NASA, global land cover from the European Space Agency, and SRTM elevation data also from NASA. And all of this was imported, analyzed, and exported through ArcMap 10.7. So the results I found here, you can see a map of northwestern Pakistan. The darker areas are areas with higher population density. So you see here in the east is the more urban, densely populated area. This right here is Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan. And you see that terrorist activity is mostly concentrated around the west. So this is all of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda's activity from 2010 to 2017. And you can see it's symbolized by the different types of activity. So red dots here are explosions, usually bombings. Blue dots are instances of violence against civilians. Yellow dots are battles between these insurgent groups and the Pakistani military. The terrorist groups have a footprint in northwestern Pakistan. And here you see the US drone strikes, the main focus of my project, are located also in northwestern Pakistan, but within a smaller region. So these are all 353 drone strikes during the Obama administration from all the way from early 2009 to early 2017. And here you see the symbology is that the purple dots show drone strikes where no terrorist or insurgent leaders were killed, and green dots show where leaders were killed. And it shows that only 14% of US drone strikes that are reported have killed terrorist leaders, which is kind of an amazingly low statistic considering the fact that the official US government rhetoric around the use of drone strikes is we are specifically targeting terrorist militant leaders to destabilize their organizations. But this shows that actually a very low percentage of drone strikes are successful in specifically killing terrorist leaders. Another result I found was that these hotspots were located mostly in tribal regions. So here you see a kernel density map. The blue regions are areas with very low drone strike casualties, and the red regions are areas with very high casualties. And here you see in North Waziristan and South Waziristan are the main hotspots of drone strike casualties. You can also see a couple hotspots here in Kuram, Orksai, and Khyber. And what all these regions have in common are that they are part of the federally administered region of Pakistan, which is which is a tribally administered area. So the central government doesn't have a lot of control, and thus it makes it easy for these terrorists to hide out there or build military compounds, and that's why it makes it a hotspot for drone strikes. So you see here in our next map is the elevation. Another finding that I found was that these drone strikes mostly occurred in areas with rough terrain and high elevation. So if you see here in the general map of Pakistan, you can see that the eastern, more urban area has a much lower elevation, and it's the western border area that has a lot higher elevation. Specifically, the area that we're zoomed in here, where all these drone strikes are, have very rough terrain and high elevation. This is also another factor because having areas with rough terrain are less governed. They're easier to hide out, easier to hide from surveillance if you're building into a hill or a mountain, and that also makes it a prime target for US drone strikes. This map shows the total casualties per drone strike and the percentage of civilian casualties for every drone strike. So all the blue dots here show drone strikes with 0% casualties. And as it goes from green to yellow to orange to red, the proportion of civilian casualties per strike gets higher and higher. Now this data isn't perfect. It was recorded through New America's compilation of local media sources and local journalistic investigations and submissions, but it's the best data that we have on civilian casualties for these US drone strikes. And 11% of these strikes had a civilian casualty proportion of 30% or higher, which is another remarkable statistic because the US rhetoric behind using drone strikes is that they're very precise and that they cause very little collateral damage, especially when it comes to civilians. So you can see there are a couple drone strikes here that have anywhere from 30 to 60 casualties per strike, and they have close to 100% of civilian casualties. So it shows another flaw behind the US drone strike policy. So my conclusion is that terrorist activity and drone strikes are concentrated within northwestern Pakistan, mostly the tribal regions of Waziristan that you see here with the purple and green dots. And the difference between the terrorist activity and the drone strikes here shows that just using terrorist activity as a predictor for drone strikes is impossible. There are other political considerations that go into where these drone strikes hit and where these terrorists are hiding out. And I also found that drone strikes are mostly concentrated in highly elevated areas like you see here, and with areas with rough terrain that provide an advantage to terrorists and insurgents in the area. And there is a low but still very notable proportion of civilian casualties all throughout the recorded drone strikes in Pakistan. So some areas for further research include using ethnicity data. So as I mentioned, these federally administered tribal regions of northwestern Pakistan are less governed by the central government. And it's partly because there's a very different ethnic composition between this western area and the eastern area. So that would be an interesting area for future research. And the drone strike data that I used is actually a very, very rich data set. It contains a lot of data on the type of target. So was it a house? Was it a military compound? Was it a vehicle? It also contains data on the type of organization that was targeted. So Al-Qaeda, Taliban, other insurgent groups in the area. So future research could also utilize those variables and see if there's any relationship between their location, the number of casualties, and the type of target, the organization that was targeted. So that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank Magic for this great opportunity to share my research, Rhodes for the resources, and Dr. Boyle for equipping me with the skills and tools to conduct this research. Thank you. Be open to any questions.
Great. So yeah, we got plenty of time for questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing? This is Joe Armstrong. I have a question. Coming from a military background, other variables that you may want to take into consideration, and this isn't necessarily a question, but just an observation, is the payload, ordnance payload on the drone. Also, if it's a high value target, that sometimes they want to seize the opportunity to take that target out, and they take into consideration collateral damage, circular error probability, and the blast radius. So those are things that may be variables when conducting drone strikes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So do you think that sort of information's in your data set that you talked about? Or?
I think because the most of the data is based on journalists or local residents reporting these strikes and reporting how many people died. I think they were affiliated with the Taliban.
Oh,
So I
okay.
don't know if I'll have specific data on which drone, which missile was used. But in general, I think there is data on what type of drone, what type of drones are usually used in these cases. So I could make some inferences based on that data.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, we have time if anybody else has a question. That's a very interesting presentation.
June, this is Sean. Did you run across any data on failed missions? Like something that was planned, but then just didn't quite work out, or it was done wrong or incorrect, something like that?
When it comes to failed missions, I think there's definitely a couple types. A lot of this is very covert and classified.
Yeah.
So if there are operations that are planned and then aborted at the last minute and nothing really happens, I think that would be very hard to know about, until decades later when all those intelligence reports are declassified. But I think a good example of failed missions, a good one type would be the high civilian casualty strikes. Those could definitely be, it could definitely be the case that it was a very high value target and they did the cost benefit analysis, or it could be the case that there was a mistake in identifying the target, because that has happened before.
Yeah.
With the CIA's so what they call signature strikes. So the joke is that if there are 3 men doing jumping jacks in their backyard, then that's automatically a military compound to the CIA. And that's the justification that they use. So that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but also there's a kernel of truth in showing how they determine these targets. Because sometimes it's not based on the ground intelligence. It's only based on observing people, which can be misinterpreted.
Excellent. Good answer. Thank you.
Hey, June. This is not a question. Sorry, Shara. But I don't know if you're interested, but if you plan on getting your master's, Penn State has a graduate certificate in geospatial intelligence analytics. So that might be something you want to look into.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so something I was thinking about as I was reading this is just how many of these are intercepted. That, like he was talking about the failed ones. Are there a great amount that are intercepted somehow?
I don't know. I don't think that the Pakistani government or these insurgents have the technology to intercept these drone strikes, or the usually Hellfire missiles that are fired from the Predator drones. So I think my best educated guess would be that it's a very low proportion that is intercepted.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, June, I came in kind of at the middle of this presentation, but what are some of your source materials for this study?
Yeah, so most of the geographic data I got from NASA, European Space Agency, but the drone strike data and the terrorist activity data I got from New America, which is a think tank that tracks international security issues, and the terrorist activity data is from the Armed Conflict and Event Database, the ACLED.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to pursue a career in geospatial intelligence, I recommend that you tap into the National Geospatial Agency's website. They have a lot of useful data that's unclassified. NGA.
NGA.
Great. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a beautiful presentation.
Yes, these are all great presentations, very interesting. So last but not least, we have Aaron Weiss, and he is going to be presenting on impervious surfaces and urban heat islands, Memphis versus Nashville.
Hey everybody, my name is Aaron. I'm a senior urban studies major, so that shapes a lot of the research that I do. Last year I did research on the toxic release inventory sites and how they relate to Memphis demographics. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So when I moved to, oh, there it is. When I moved to Memphis for school, everyone told me coming from Nashville that it's so hot down there. You're not going to be able to bear it. Like I'm telling you now, you just better be ready. So I kind of wanted to do a little research on this and see if their concerns were valid, because once I got here, I realized that it's a lot greener in my opinion. That's just personal opinion, no facts to back that up, but I love the nature that they built into the city. And I believe that it's helped them in a lot of ways. So urban heat islands are caused, caused by dark and impervious surfaces that increase overall surface temperature, energy consumption, and pollution of a city. This is because they absorb the sun's energy and then re-emit the energy over time. And these heat islands cause a variety of negative effects. Between 2004 and 2018, there was an average of 702 heat-related deaths per year. These aren't directly related to urban heat islands, but urban heat islands obviously play a role in the heat of a city in general. Furthermore, these impervious surfaces are responsible for lower air quality and lower water quality. This is because the pollutants cannot escape or disperse in a city. Warm water disturbs the ecosystem in areas that were originally accustomed to cooler water temperatures. So the aquatic life that are naturally used to the cooler temperatures have to move away or sometimes even die. And heat islands account for about a 1 to 7% or 1 to 7 degree Fahrenheit increase of daytime temperatures in urban areas compared to outer regions such as suburban areas or rural areas. So clearly there's a need to diminish the effects of urban heat islands if we hope to continue to fight global warming and just promote a healthier city life in general. So my objectives for this is to visualize the amount of impervious surfaces in Memphis and Nashville to find the relationship between impervious surface percentage and surface temperature in the two cities. And I also wanted to compare Memphis and Nashville to see which city has more impervious surfaces and a greater difference between urban and suburban temperatures. Oh, that's a typo, my bad. So my methods for this, I retrieve my impervious surface data from Socioeconomic Data and Application Center and surface temperature from Earth Explorer. All of the data is from 2017. And this is because the Socioeconomic Data and Application Center only had impervious surface data for 2017. So I wanted to stay true to that year because I know that land cover changes over time and there's a lot of new efforts to push for a more natural city, if you will. Once again, the surface temperature data is from mid-June for Nashville and mid-July in Memphis to represent a hot day. I tried to find the clearest picture that I could for the summer of 2017 for each city. But as you'll see, for some reason, Earth Explorer had hardly any pictures of Nashville that did not have some cloud cover. So I chose the one that had the least cloud cover, but it still plays a role in the overall research. Next, I converted the temperature values from Kelvin to Fahrenheit, formatted the impervious surface data to exclude areas that had no data. There was no data in some of these areas because it was a global scale. So naturally, there's going to be a few areas where, maybe the satellite just didn't pick up that data or it was just missing in general. Next, I clipped the rasters to fit the boundaries of the counties containing Memphis and Nashville. All the data were displayed using WGS 1984 coordinate system. That was to stay true to the CDAC data. And then I manually entered break values to display the maps with the same symbology. So you get the overall picture of both cities. So these are my results. For the impervious surfaces of Shelby County, you can see that there's clearly a lot downtown, but South Memphis actually has a lot of impervious surfaces. And I know from my past research that these areas are typically minority communities. And there's a lot of research that's ongoing that I have not actually looked into for this particular project about how a lot of minority communities actually don't have access to green areas, and a lot of times they aren't, I guess, like beautified communities. Whereas in, for instance, like Midtown Memphis, you know, there's streets with just gigantic trees and beautiful arts around. But yeah, that's another area of research I'll look into later. Next, I looked at Davidson County, and you can see that there's a very high concentration in the Nashville area of downtown of impervious surfaces. And you can see once again that kind of the outer regions also have a good amount compared to Shelby County. Then I looked at the land surface temperature. So for Memphis, the average surface temperature was approximately 97.8 degrees Fahrenheit. There were very few areas that exceeded 150 degrees. I want to say that there was maybe 2 data entries that went above 150 degrees of a surface temperature. But as you can see, it's relatively between the 80 to 90 range, maybe up to 110, but there are kind of sparse areas that go above 110 degrees, which is definitely a higher end of land surface temperature. So in Davidson County, as you can see, there is a lot of cloud cover in this image and negative values in the legend. But I really, I promise you this was the clearest picture. I spent so many hours trying to get the perfect image of this. But Nashville had a surface temperature of about 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, that is including negative temperatures, and there were quite a few negative temperatures for the clouds that you see. So the data is obviously skewed in their favor, but the cloud cover, as I said, really helped them because there were so many areas that had temperatures of above 110 degrees. And as you can see through the cloud cover, there are a lot of places that you just didn't see this amount of red in the Shelby County map. So overall, for my conclusion, Nashville had the location of the highest surface temperature, 161.2 degrees Fahrenheit, but the average was skewed by the cloud coverage. So once again, due to the negative values, I think that Nashville got a lot of help. As you can see side by side here, there is just a lot more bright red in Davidson County than there is in Shelby County. So apart from cloud cover, it is my conclusion that it's clear that Nashville has the highest amount of concentrated impervious surfaces, the highest overall surface temperature for one area, and therefore the hottest urban heat island out of the 2 cities. I would like to look into it in a more recent time because I know that both cities have put in efforts to try to negate the effects of the urban heat islands. And there's a push for more natural cities in general. So I'd like to see the land cover change from 2020. I think it'd be really interesting to look at 2017 versus 2020 in terms of land surface temperature and land coverage as well. And I would also really like to look into how demographics have played a role in which areas have more impervious surfaces and how they may be underserved through just the innate planning of a city. These are my references and my acknowledgements to Magic, of course, for this opportunity, for Rhodes College for allowing me to use the ArcGIS Desktop 10.71 software, and Professor Boyle for all the encouragement and useful advice. Lord knows that I would not have made it here without her. Yeah, so any questions, any concerns?
Hey, Aaron, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did you compare the size of the counties together to see the percentage of different?
Yeah, so let's see if I can go back. It is not letting me for some reason. But I put the scale bar at the bottom. I probably glanced through it, but I tried to keep the scale bar very similar, and I didn't do an exact comparison of the size, but there were relatively the same amount of data entries and the scale bars were about the same. So I don't have an exact answer for you, but yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Of course, anybody else have a presentation? This is Tom here. Or you got time for a few more questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Great.
Obviously, Nashville is growing a lot larger, a lot faster than Memphis is. Do you know, are they utilizing a whole lot of green architecture, or are they using light surface rooftops to reflect more sunlight?
Mhm. I do not know specifically. I know that there's been a very big push for like green rooftops. That's something that I would really enjoy seeing. And I know that they just opened the Music City Center a few years ago, and I believe the entire rooftop is a green space, and they even have like beehives on top of the Music City Center. But no, I don't think that there has been, in my opinion, a large enough push for it in southern cities to which is where it is really needed, where it's the hottest, in my opinion, to have like green rooftops and solar rooftops. That's something that I would really love to see. But I think that the South in general also has a lot of different urban issues that maybe they aren't so focused on creating a natural city. But there's been research that says that it decreases crime and so many other things just by having a more beautiful urban landscape.
Yeah, that Music City Center is a fascinating building. I was there a few years ago, and they recycle water waste. I mean, it's a very modern building, and I was wondering if they were doing that in other parts.
Yeah, I believe that was really their first push for it. I don't think that they've really expanded upon it. Something that a lot of places are doing are like putting tax incentives to have green rooftops on top of your buildings and things like that. But I just don't think that they've made the full-fledged push for it yet.
Cool, great. Thanks again. Thanks for the presentations. Thanks for all the great questions from everybody. And we'll let Shara tally up the scores, and we'll hear the exciting result of the voting after the next presentation or the next event that we're doing. So let me let Michelle Field take over. She's going to talk about the map gallery contest and the winners. And take it away, Michelle.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. So we had, two categories, one for students and one for professionals. We had 7 great entries for the student competition. I apologize. I'm trying to pull it up here. So I don't really have a whole lot to say. We had fantastic entries. So our first place winner goes to Meredith Bacue for her poster on distribution of spotted lanternflies. Sorry, I'm reading this completely wrong. Distribution of spotted lanternfly in relation to the distribution of the preferred host plant, tree of heaven. So congratulations, Meredith. Our second winner goes to Kan Tun, apologize if I said your name wrong, for the relationship between herbicide-resistant corn cultivation and abundance of common milkweeds and monarch butterflies in the American Corn Belt. And then our third winner goes to June Huang for mapping a hypothetical North Korean artillery and missile attack. So congratulations to all of our winners. You all did a fantastic job. Thank you for all of your submissions, and they absolutely look amazing.
Michelle, is it possible, can we share how many the vote percentages on those? Or I know that was,
I mean, yeah, so
I don't know how many people did we end up getting to vote?
yep, so 83 people voted. The percentages, so it was actually very close. Meredith's average score was, and this is out of 5, so hers was 4.46. Khan's was 4.43, and June's was 4.24. So they were all very close. So you guys did an amazing job. Thank you. And thank you to everyone else who participated and submitted their maps. fourth place was actually Sage Martin and Aaron Weist. So your average score was 4.23, so just by 0.01. So I apologize for that. Number 5 was Joe Hernandez with 3.82. And then number 6 was Berkay Talk with 3.49 and Fatima Husani with 3.33. So thank you all. And I will hand it back over to Tom.
Great. So do you happen to have images of these that we could see? I thought we might share those while we could. I guess I should ask you in advance, but I didn't know if you have images.
1 second. Let's see here.
Sorry about this. We're working on the fly here.
We gotta give our judges a few more minutes to score those presentations for the scholarships.
Yeah, they have a lot of adding up to do.
Share my screen.
So
Yeah, let me know when you
Michelle,
can see.
so are all of these going to be posted to the Magic website, or have you already posted them? Or
They will be posted, yes,
Okay,
after
great.
this. So this is Berkay Talks map here. It's for the Memphis Historical Relief Map of 1939.
okay, cool.
And then this is Joe Hernandez, Wetlands Role in Houston's Future Flooding.
Okay.
Con Tun's relationship between herbicide-resistant corn cultivation and abundance of common milkweeds and monarch butterflies in the American Corn Belt.
And that was the second place winner, I believe.
Yes, second place. This is Meredith. She won first place. Distribution of spotted lanternfly in relation to the distribution of their preferred host plant, tree of heaven.
That's interesting because isn't the tree of heaven an invasive plant? Or am I thinking of a different plant?
It is. Tree of
Okay.
heaven is an invasive species.
Okay.
And then we have investigating land use change in Kabul, Afghanistan, 2001 to 2019 from Fatima Husani.
Cool.
And then mapping a hypothetical North Korean artillery and missile attack from June Huang. And he won third place. And then Sage Martin and Aaron Weist, Shelby County Toxic Sites and Neighborhood Demographics. And then we are back at the beginning. So that is all I have.
Beautiful.
Oh, and I'm sorry. Sorry, Sean. The first place winner for our professional category goes to Tipton County GIS. I will pull that back up. I'm very sorry. Let's see here.
Tipton County won, huh?
I told y'all Tipton County was gonna win.
Share my screen. Share. So this was Sean Anderson with Tipton County GIS. For Tipton County, Tennessee road identification map, which is very cool to look at.
It looks like the map maker spent a lot of time on the left side over there with that list of road names.
I'm sure he just took it out of a database.
I'll tell you, having gone to the Magic Conference for the last 6 years, I feel like every year in that map gallery row of maps we had set up, every year there'd be that outline of Tipton County. I've just gotten to know it so well.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, great. Well, congratulations for all our folks who entered. I know all the maps I saw looked really good. I can't wait to look at them in more detail later. And congratulations to all the winners. I really appreciate everybody participating this year. As far as I know, I mean, I guess I'll give a little bit I guess, Cheryl, let me know when you're ready and we'll go ahead with the award winners. But until then, I'll just kind of give a little bit. I prepared some information just to share with everybody while we have this break here when we're doing our tallying. And so it's all live, so it's, nervous, makes everybody nervous. As far as I know, I really want to actually thank Michelle and Shara for getting these contests going. We try to do them every year. We really wanted to do them at the conference. We ended up not doing a conference. And really, I feel like both of you guys kind of pushed the rest of us into getting this done, to getting it moving forward. And I really appreciate that, because otherwise we probably would just have missed a whole year. And I hate, for folks, especially guys in school that are graduating, to miss the chance to compete and, get something on your resumes and hopefully win some prizes. So I really appreciate them getting it going. Michelle's been great about just following up with us and making us respond and get it going. And really, as I'm watching this today, I think this is actually a really cool way to do it. It really provides emphasis on the two contests, and it really gives a chance to speak out to a big group. So we'll see how we do in the future. As far as I know, we're planning to do one at the conference, and so we'll be competing again if anybody's sticking around or in graduate school or otherwise want to compete. Not sure how it works, but we'll definitely do these competitions again. While I have a few minutes, let me go and talk about what's coming up on Magic. So Michelle's also arranged for a student showcase. I have it written as Observing and Analyzing Layers of Time in Memphis, Tennessee. This is by Emily Woolsey, and this is set for April 28th, 2021. So just in what's that, 5 days from now. It's later in the day. It's at 4 p.m. to allow to fit around everybody's schedules. And so please come and attend. It looks to be a really good presentation. I'm looking forward to it. Shara, I don't want to interrupt Shara if she's ready. Are you ready? Okay, great. So we're live and we're going back to Shara, and Shara's ready to go. So I'll give more announcements after we do the announcements from the contest. Go, Shara.
Okay, thank you, Tom. All right, so we have a close contest here. These were all really, really good topics and great presentations. First of all, I'd like to thank our judges today, which were Sean Anderson, Andrew McColgan, myself, Marie Holyfield, and Lee Owens. Appreciate your time and effort in doing this and helping out. This is a very difficult task when we have such great presentations to judge. So we'll start off by announcing our third place winner. Our third place winner is Joe Hernandez. So he will be receiving a $500 check as his award, and his presentation was on wetland suitability in high flood risk zones in Harris County, Texas. Congratulations, Joe.
Thank you.
And I will say our second and third place, they were so close. I mean, very, very close. They couldn't have been any closer. But our second place goes to Aaron Weiss for impervious surfaces and urban heat islands, Memphis versus Nashville. So you will receive a check for the amount of $1,000. So congratulations, Aaron.
Thank you.
And that leaves our first place winner for June Huang for U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan, uncovering the lesser known war on terror. And June, you will be receiving a check in the amount of $1,500. So congratulations, June.
Thank you so much.
So I do want to thank all of you for participating in this. It's just great to see and hear what you guys have been studying and everything that you've been doing and everything that I know that you're going to be doing in the future with GIS. Working with GIS is a lot of fun, but it's a very important thing, I believe, and there's so many things that we can do with it. And it's something that we use to solve real world problems. And I think that was demonstrated here today with each one of your presentations. So I just want to wish you the best of luck in your school and in your careers. But congratulations, everybody. Back to you, Tom.
Great, thanks so much. And wow, that was a cliffhanger. So it was really cool though, y'all doing it live and getting that together and being all organized to do it. So thanks again. So I'll just kind of wrap it up. I had mentioned the April 28th presentation. We have another presentation set for June 16th with Yusang Huan. That's talking about machine learning. I'm trying to think with leveraging machine learning to understand urban change with net construction. So should be very interesting. A couple other things I wanted to mention. We talked about membership, and then Rob mentioned the conference. The conference is scheduled for November 18th and 19th at the Botanic Gardens. So we're planning to do it in person. You know, if you guys transition to professional members, that's fine too. Come a student or professional, would really love to have everyone on this call attend. As Rob mentioned, the attendance is basically joining Magic. So do it now, it's cheaper. The price goes up later in the year. And that's pretty much it. Does anybody have anything they want to say? We'll open the forum if anybody wants to say anything in particular. Cool. Well, thanks for, oh, Michelle.
I was just going to say congratulations to all of you. Thank you for participating. This has been awesome. And we are so excited to hear your presentations and to get to learn all of these cool things.
Yeah, no, one thing I guess I kind of mentioned in passing, but I should probably emphasize is we're gonna post the all the poster contests on the Magic website. And again, if any of you folks are looking for jobs in the future, or want to add that to your resume, I think that's a great thing to add to your resume, is that you participated and it's being posted on the organization's website, and you can refer people to it for a while at least. I don't know how long we'll keep them, but certainly for a while. So great, thanks again. Talk to everybody soon. Goodbye.
See you, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.